Are we going to say action? Or all right. Well, we are the Stetson Family Enterprise Center Case Study Competition Team. I'm Mike Furlong, this is Madison Anderson, Tori Hotley, and Abby Shoup. And today we're going to present some analysis and recommendations on FBD distributors. Here we have a genogram of the relevant members of the family. Before this we had a first generation that is no longer involved. They are both deceased. And they sort of set the tone, obviously, for how this whole situation was going to shake out. They set values that were clearly ownership first. They're very much about dividends and very much about financially supporting the family going forward. So here you see the Generation 2 members that are relevant. All of the people who are marked here in a lighter blue are the ones involved in the family business because we had a lot of members who weren't named, so we wanted to be clear on who was involved. So here we have the three Generation 2 siblings who are our most relevant characters here. We have Ben, who's the oldest. He's in his early 50s. He's currently CEO of the business and running this distribution company that runs upwards of $220 million in sales a year, so big job for Ben. We have Leslie, who is the middle sister. Leslie's not directly involved in the business, but obviously has two children who are coming up in the business, one in a mid-level management position and one in an entry-level position. Until 3 years ago, her husband was CFO, but he is tragically no longer with us. He passed away in a car accident. And then aside from those Generation 2 members, we have James, who is the youngest, in a mid-level management position with not much aspiration to rise higher. He's in his late 40s, and has one child who has actually expressed aspirations to become CEO and run the business overall. So here we can see the balance of power between the second and third generation. They have a very interesting stock structure. Their stocks are divided into categories by generation. So the second generation has all of the voting shares, and their stock is completely invested in decision making, and the third generation has all of the shares which entitle them to dividends. So all of the decision making is weighted towards the second generation, and all of the consequences of that decision making are weighted towards the third generation. So we have some assets and stakeholders. They have 300 plus employees and 40 years in the community. They're very involved, and despite the fact that they're ownership first, that's obviously going to be something that's taken into account. Here we have our key players, just to recap and describe them in a little more detail. Ben, who is in his early 50s and is currently CEO, has run the company for a long time, but is becoming disengaged because of conflicts over a structural decline in their industry. There's been a lot of back and forths about how to manage that. They're losing their competitive advantage slowly, so it's kind of a train wreck that they can see coming, and they're arguing over how to handle this going forward. This has led to a lot of family problems as they have biannual family meetings, but nobody really buys into them, nobody really talks about what they're supposed to talk about at these meetings. So at this point, Ben, who is a little bit disengaged, disenfranchised, is seeking retirement. So succession for him is going to be an issue here. Leslie is not involved in management, like we said, but she has two kids who are involved in the business, one in mid-level and one in entry-level. So obviously she has a pretty major stake in the business. And then we have James, who has very ambitious kids and is not personally ambitious at all. So the main catalyst for our decision making in this case was an outside offer to buy the business. Like I said, the business, as it is currently in structural decline. The size that it is right now, it cannot indefinitely survive. It's not sustainable. A comparable company, Argus, in the region, has made an offer to buy out FBD distributors. And they have been a fringe competitor, and they're of a similar size and a similar structure themselves, sort of a three-generation business, very much the same kind of values. And like I said, you're going to handle the structural decline, and the trend of the industry right now in handling that structural decline is consolidating and enlarging and buying out competitors. So here we have the generational relationships, because we want to cover how values are going down through the generations. G1, who we didn't show because they are both deceased, sort of set these values in place of ownership first. This is how we want to run this. This is how we want to distribute dividends. G2 then makes the decisions based on these values, and G3 takes the consequences of those decisions. So it's a very compartmentalized approach. People are kind of stuck in the roles they are and don't really have much leeway to move around. So here we have our key issues. Obviously, number one is whether we're going to sell this business or not. If the choice is made to not sell the business, then Ben's succession is a key issue because Ben has run this company very well, but very much as a singular force. So we're going to need to pick up another person and start getting them training right away to replace that kind of vacuum of Ben's skills. Managing these personal issues without the business. This is another issue with James, who doesn't have the aspirations to rise very high in the business. James has had a very turbulent personal life and has used the business as a financial and personal kind of anchor and support system for him. This is obviously a problem when making the decision to buy or sell the business. The third generation involvement in governance is another key issue. Currently they're not involved in governance, but they're taking all the consequences, so they're definitely just, choosing carrot or stick in the second generation and seeing what happens with the third generation. So in light of everything we've talked about, we have an issue statement to kind of boil down what FBD has to do. How can the Fiorentino family and FBD company find the best course of action for sale of their business that continues to promote growth and success while sustaining the family value of financial security for the family? So once again, ownership first when we're talking about the three systems here. We're going to talk about the one they're focusing on, ownership first going forward, and what is that going to look like when it's implemented. And now Abby's going to give you a little bit of analysis on the situation.
Okay, so using the three-circle model, we're just kind of laying out where everybody is. You have Ben, James, and the Generation 3 who have ownership and work within the family enterprise and are members of the family. Leslie and 4 Generation 3 that are in the family and have ownership but are not involved with the actual business. And then your 300 employees, your outside CFO hired after Leslie's husband died, and the VP of Human Resources. Using Jaffe's 3 pathways and the three-circle model, we kind of combined a little bit of an analysis. For pathway 1, nurturing the family, they do have biannual family meetings, and they do they're very open to the family working within the business. However, there are conflicts starting to occur, and they don't really acknowledge these conflicts. For stewarding the family enterprise, they've had sustainable growth for the past 15 years with Ben being CEO, but there are some uncertainties about the future of the business and sustaining growth, keeping the growth going. And there's a declining competitive advantage, and there is no family council. And then for cultivating human capital for the next generation, G3 is showing interest. You have three G3 actually in the business and have plans to stay there. G3 does attend the biannual meetings, but we're not really sure about G3's capabilities and if they'd actually be able to carry the business for the years to come. And now Madison will continue our analysis.
So from the analysis, we made a list of things that the company has to do. First thing, they're going to have to create a decision-making board that will ultimately lead to the decision of selling or keeping the business. So the board will include one outsider who has experience in selling a family business, and he will be compensated from the business. The current CFO will also be on the board, and he will act as kind of like a financial advisor during the decision-making. All of the G2 members will be on the board, and one rep from G3 that's in the business and one rep from G3 that is not in the business will both sit on the board. And after they create the board, the first step is evaluating the business's worth to see if it's worth selling or if they should continue the business. And they're going to assess human capital, and how that's going to happen is the vice president of HR will assess each member in Generation 3 and anonymously and present it to the board to see if they're able to continue this business. So here's a little timeline of the creation of the board, just to get a little visual on it. So the first 90 days, they will create the board and find the outside advisor to guide them. And the next 30 days is when they will evaluate the business's worth and assess G3. And that is a total of a 4-month period. And at the end of that 4-month period is when the ultimate decision will be made whether to buy or sell the business. And now Tori will go into the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Gotta get in front of the camera here. Okay. Am I in? Great. Okay. So we basically are looking at 3 ways for them to deal with their issues here. The first is to parcel their business out. So they sell it, they liquidate the wealth, and everybody gets their own share. Everybody sort of has equal amounts of stock, they get what they get, and they can go their own separate ways. This does provide financial security, but is it sustainable? Well, that's sort of the question. It would eliminate these meetings that everybody feels isn't accomplishing anything. They're going, they're sitting, they're not getting information. So they're not having value there. It satisfies Ben. Ben is the CEO, he wants to get out, he's done, he doesn't have children in the business. But it does leave the question, what is everybody else thinking in this? The next one would be keep everything together. Sell the operating company again, liquidate the wealth. However, this time you're going to develop a family office, putting all the money into one pot where they can invest with it. This provides a more sustainable long-term idea of financial security, which is very important to the family. It creates lots of new opportunities as well as building family affinity because they will in theory be investing based on what the family values. Next, hard sell, then don't sell. The final offer is keep the company and